What is up, everyone? Moving back again with another collab video with Andy. We've got Andy back on the show again. We've done a 70s and 80s decade, and today we are talking about my favourite decade personally. That is the 90s. But first, before we get into that, Andy, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Glad to be back on again.
Yeah, good. Right, well, we picked 5 films each year today, like usual, but we have put a little bonus one in here because we both agreed that we can't talk about this 90s without mentioning this film. It's just got to be in there, but we'll get to that in a minute. And I just want to say, like, the reason my favourite decade of the 90s is, well, it proved it when I was looking up 5 films. It was impossible. Remember I said to you, I've picked 3 for now, but I'm going to have to spend the rest of the day thinking of the other 2 because there was that many. I put a little tweet out and everyone was saying their favourite ones, and someone said, what about Leon and The Usual Suspect? And, you know what? I didn't even think of that.
Exactly.
There's just so many films, it really is. But, well, what do you think about the 90s then, Andy? What is it good for you? Is it a good decade, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the reason it is my favourite as I grew up in the decade, so I know every film inside and out. And I think sometimes when you grow up with stuff, you don't appreciate them as much, whereas with the 80s and 70s, I had to revisit them as I got older, so appreciated them more. But yeah, the 90s, as we discussed, we obviously message each other back and forth about what films do you want to do. And I forgot a lot of the films. You just mentioned Leon. I love Leon, or The Professional as it was in America. I didn't even think of that film, so there's just so many good films, so many good directors in the 90s, so many good actors, and obviously there's loads of good action films in the 90s, of course, another great era for action films. So yeah, it's a great era. Obviously, growing up in it, you know, good kids films as well, a lot of action, good funny comedies. You know, one of my favorite comedies of all time didn't even make this list. So it's a very difficult year to pick 5 films out, but I think we picked some good ones.
What is that comedy? Can you?
Dumb and Dumber, of course. You know, not being on the list, it's just, you know, it's absolutely hilarious. But it just didn't. I don't know. I find it hard to put comedies in because I think you take them for granted. Really, like I don't think I put many comedies in any of the lists you've done. I think you tend to pick your favorite like gritty films or like action films because they're the films that you like sort of go see. But yeah, Dumb and Dumber is a great film.
I totally agree. I mean, the films we've picked here are probably like, you know, creme de la creme of the 90s, some of these, yeah. But like you said, there's so many just good ones, isn't there? Like Face Off and Con
Oh,
Air.
Face Off, yeah.
Face Off, Con Air, Dumb and Dumber, like you said, that could just go in like a very, very good film list, you know what I mean? But I think we've picked some really good ones here. So I think we'll start with the bonus one because we've got 11 films altogether. So we'll start with this one, and that is, of course, The Shawshank Redemption. Now, we both agreed we can't make this list without mentioning this film. But to me, it's a brilliant movie that you could introduce. Like, say someone just said, "I want to start watching movies now." This would be one of the first ones you're showing them, I think, because it's a movie that's got all the emotional feels, I think, and I think why a lot of people say it's the best film of all time to some people is because it's a movie for everyone, and a lot of people like realistic films as well. It doesn't go outside, like, all right, you could say Spoon at a Wall over 18 years, but it's a very realistic film, I feel, and it just hits all them notes with friendship and stuff, and it's got everything, brilliant characters. I mean, who doesn't love a good prison film as well? But
Exactly, yeah.
I think this was a number 1 on IMDb for a while. I'm not sure of it. I think it still might be, actually. It's this or The Godfather anyway, but a lot of people's favourite film, and it's just brilliant, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Shawshank Redemption. I don't think I got to it late. I didn't know what it was. I remember, you know, being younger, like, you know, 8 or 9. I think when it came out, it didn't do that well at the box office, if I remember rightly. And it had a massive run on, you know, DVD, so much so that they sold that many that I think it's about $1.99 now because everyone's already got it. They just put the price so low. And yeah, it's just a great film. Tim Robbins, obviously, you know, is the lead in it. Morgan Freeman, obviously, he had a couple of good, you know, films like Driving Miss Daisy in 1989. But I think this is the quintessential performance of Morgan Freeman as Red. And there's just loads of Frank Darabont actors who are, you know, the sort of people you know. You don't really know the names, but we'll talk about Frank Darabont more later. But you know, there's a lot of, and I think Stephen King also loved this book like this film a lot. I think there's a story where he give the check which he'd received for the film's rights back to Frank Darabont, signed as a memento for the work he did on this film. And I think it is an excellent. It's such a great film. As I say, it's probably the number one or number two feel good films of all time. Really, especially the scene where he's in the rain at the end with his arms out wide. You know, it's just a fantastic visual. And there's everything. There's obviously the ups, there's downs, there's. You know, I think the main thing is friendship. It's a real great friendship film.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned that scene there about where he's got his arms out in the rain. I've got a competition on the channel right now, if you don't know about it. But it's the question on that competition was name your favourite movie scene, and a good few people did put that one because you just made up for him, aren't you? Yeah. And like when you said about Morgan Freeman as well, it's like, he's known now as one of them people who can just narrate, isn't he? And I think it's mainly down to this film, isn't it? Because it's brilliant the way he tells the story, I feel. But I just want to say as well, like we might mention some spoilers here about these films because they are 20 odd years old. So if you don't want to know spoilers about a certain film, maybe just skip forward a little bit. But I'm sure a lot of you have seen these movies. It's the one I talk about is, you feel like he's about to get free and you're just so happy for him. And that guy, I forgot his name, where he says, oh yeah, I can back it up that Andy's innocent. And he goes, are you sure? Yeah, the warden just goes, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, just nods to the sniper and just blows it. And it's just like, you're like, oh my God, I thought he was getting out here. But
I think there's so many good little false ends, I guess. You know, there's that one where obviously I can't remember the kid's name. He gets shot in the back of the head, obviously by Clancy Brown, and there's the bit where Andy's on the roof and he gets them the beers on the roof because he tells him not to stop paying tax on his brother's money. He's getting held over it. There's also one of my favourite scenes, and it's a really surreal scene, really. It you know, for a film anyway, is that where he's in the warden's office and he puts the record on with the classic music and he's just sitting there and everyone else is just gazing at the speaker. It's just a fantastic scene, and you know, there's so many great scenes in it. You know, I think there's obviously there's awful scenes as well. It's not a film without it's very harsh scenes, especially where Andy's getting attacked by either rapist, we'll call them. You know, it's not a nice film overall, but there's ups and downs, and there's obviously moments of lovely friendship, but there's also like really tough moments, and I think it's a great journey of a film.
Yeah, and great one to start with, I feel. So that is The Shawshank Redemption, and sure, you've all seen that. If you haven't, you need to. But all right, Andy, we'll move on to the next one then.
Okay, show me some pick.
Yeah, well, seeing as you're the guest, mate, go on. You pick one of your five.
I will start with 1994, Forrest Gump, the film by Robert Zemeckis. Now, this is, I don't get me wrong, I can cry at films. I will admit that. I'm a man who can cry at films. And this is one of the films that really gets to me. I think this is one of the great stories, I think, in film. It's about, spoiler alert. We'll call him simple. He's not the brightest tool, but he has this extraordinary life and extraordinary effect on the people he meets. And obviously, there's many famous faces and famous incidents he's involved with over the time. But it's just a beautiful film, and his friendship with Lieutenant Dan, who's played by Gary Sinise, his relationship with Jenny, who's played by Robin Wright Penn, just a really, really good film. I think it's, again, similar to Shawshank Redemption. It's brought out the same year. What a year for films! A couple of other films we'll mention were brought out that year as well, 94. It's just, I think these are the feel good films. The 90s had a lot of feel good films, and this one I think is one of the great feel good films. It really warms your heart when you watch him.
It's perfect. It's just, I don't think I've seen many films with a better way of storytelling. But it's like, it's the director telling you the story from Hanks's point of view, isn't it? Because he's telling it on the park bench. And it's just, first time I watched this, I was just watching all these things happen, like getting unveiled and learning more about this character. And it's just brilliant the way it all unveils. And, he's been in the war, obviously. He's a war hero. He's brilliant at table tennis. So he's like a sports hero and stuff. It's just mad, it is. And Tom Hanks' possible best performance, in my opinion. He's absolutely fantastic in the film.
He's the man of the 90s, really. Obviously this is the second Oscar he won in the 90s. He won obviously for Philadelphia the year before as well. So he's had Best Picture twice. Best Actor twice in the 90s, and I think he is the heart and soul of the 90s films, really. You know, Tom Hanks obviously did a lot of rom-coms with Meg Ryan, Sleepers in Seattle, You've Got Mail around the same period. So I think, you know, just it again, nowadays when Tom Hanks films come on, I look forward to seeing it because he always brings such warmth to the role, and I think this is the ultimate Tom Hanks performance. And you know, he's playing basically a simple man who basically doesn't really understand how the world works, but he's so successful because of how kind-natured and how much of a nice person he is. And I think it's a good film to introduce kids to as well. Don't be wrong, there's tough scenes in it as well. Again, you know, especially with Jenny, who's obviously goes off the rails, but it's a fantastic film and one of my favorite films. I can pick it up at any point and watch it. Really, it could be 10 minutes before the end, and I'll still watch it.
Yeah, like you said, like you see, it's just so kind-hearted, and there's a bit of a message in there, I feel. But yeah, but just a brilliant film altogether. Yeah. So I lent it to my mate. Actually, he's a young kid in our work the other day, and he texted me going, "That's one of the best films I've ever seen." So, and it is. So that is Forrest Gump. Great pick, Andy. I feel like we had to mention that, didn't we? So, should we move on to the next film then?
Go on, your choice, mate.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna go with. Right. I'll just go with this now. I think if I don't mention this film, you ain't gonna like that, and I ain't gonna like that, and our audience here definitely ain't gonna like that. So I don't know if you know what that quote's from, but that's the next film. It is Pulp Fiction. So. I just think I watched this the other day. Come home, me and my girlfriend went out for a few drinks. Come home and just threw this on, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for about 5 days. I just remembered how great it was, and it's just absolutely amazing. And I remember this is one of the very few films where I put on and watched it straight again afterwards when I first seen it. It's just the way Tarantino has put this film together. It's like 3 different stories. It's just masterful filmmaking to me. It's dialogue heavy, but you're never bored listening to these characters talk. It's just got everything, hasn't it? It's just a fantastic movie. But I feel like lately I've seen a lot of people saying Tarantino's overrated, and to me, like when I watch this film, I'm just like, it's your opinion, but how the hell can you say that?
I think the problem with Tarantino is this film is too good. Like it is really, and anything after this film really, you compare it to Pulp Fiction. You know, you mentioned the dialogue there. I don't think, you know, apart from the slight overuse of racial epithets, I don't think there's a better dialogue writer than Tarantino in the film business. Like the dialogue in this is so funny, so cool as well. You know, whether it's Tim Roth in the restaurant talking to his girlfriend before they rob it. Obviously, the interplay between John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson before they enter the apartment, and while they're in the apartment getting what's believed to be Marcellus Wallace's soul. You know, and obviously even between Uma Thurman and John Travolta, it's just such a cool film. Like I you know, obviously Samuel L. Jackson became a star out of this, a massive star out of this film. But that's, you know, John Travolta hadn't done really much in years. This really invigorated his career. You know, Harvey Keitel, you know, he's done Bad Lieutenant, but after the 80s, he hadn't really had a great. He sort of reinvigorated a lot of careers with this film, and I just think that when people say he's overrated, I just think people are comparing everything to Pulp Fiction. It was the second film, of course, after Reservoir Dogs. It's one of my top 5 films ever. I could watch it all the time. You know, there's some great scenes in it. You know, even Eric Stoltz just coming in as the drug dealer, just people like that just popping up in the film. There's those little cameos. Obviously people now know Winston Wolfe off the adverts of the cars, but he's obviously is a main character, one of the characters in it. It's just superb film. You know, why did you pick this film, do you think?
Because same as you, it's in my top 5 films of all time. But there's so many great, like you said, there's so many great little moments there. And you know, one of my favourite moments of this as well, it's like one of the great little touches Tarantino added. He actually put himself in the film, didn't he? He's playing Jimmy, and he's fuming because Samuel L. Jackson sort of like trying to suck up to him a little bit, saying your coffee's great and all this. And he's going, I don't care how good my coffee is, you know, just get rid of your problem and all this. And then that Winston Wolfe comes along later on and goes, I'll have a cup of coffee. And he's just talking to Samuel L. Jackson and Travolta and has a swig of the coffee and goes, I just love that moment. But it's expertly written. And I remember the first time I watched it as well, you mentioned that restaurant scene. You just, when it comes to that at the end of the film, and you knew Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta in there, what a way to end this film. It's just unbelievable. Oh, yeah.
It's sort of, the narrative jumps around, doesn't it? It's not like linear where it starts with, and goes to the end. It jumps around, obviously. I won't spoil it too much about what happens to John Travolta, but he's at the start and he's at the end, but something happens to him in the middle. Obviously, I forgot to mention that Bruce Willis is in it as the boxer Butch, and obviously the Spanish taxi woman's voice is just absolutely fantastic, by the way. But yeah, as a film, again, it's so hard to say you could replace a role or you could have done something different to make it any better. It's like the Godfather. I don't think it is the Godfather, because the Godfather is just a slightly bit above it for me. But it's just a perfect film. Again, Tarantino, I'm a massive fan of his. I listened to a couple of podcasts he did recently. He's such a smart guy about films, and this is a filmmaker's film, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's perfect, mate. It really is. That's. I thought he sort of brought something new to cinema with this. I feel just the way he constructed it. I feel like you mentioned there, John Travolta. 1 minute something happens to him, next minute he's just in it again, like as normal, and But yeah, that is.
Sorry, just before we finish, one of my favourite bits is where they talk John Travolta and Samuel Jackson. They're walking up to the apartment and they're talking about, I think his name's Antoine Rocha, giving Mia Wallace a foot massage. And he's like, that's not even the same ballpark, just they are. And they actually, instead of walking into the room, they actually step outside to have an argument about what is the same as. It's just fantastic. It's just little things like that. It takes you out of the film, really, but it's just so clever. I think that's what's great about Tarantino. It's the right.
That's a little bit like one of the great touches as well. That scene you're talking about, where he's saying there's nothing wrong with a foot massage for about 5 minutes, and he goes, "Would you never give a guy one?" He just goes, "Fuck you."
It's just the silly touches, like what do they call a Big Mac in France? A Royale with cheese. He's like, yeah, they're so like uncool, but they're cool as well. It's just fantastic. Yeah,
it's the way Tarantino makes that conversations be so entertaining. It's
exactly. Yeah.
Well, that is Pulp Fiction, one of the greatest films ever made. I'm just looking at it now, actually. I've got a big poster in my room of it. It's just fantastic. But anyway, Andy, do you want to move on with your second movie?
Yeah, I'm going to go with this one because I'm going to save the last three because I think they're pretty special. So I'm going to go with this one now. It's 1990, Total Recall. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Paul Verhoeven, the director. This, to me, this film, this is the one of the ones most quoted Arnie films. People, I'll probably do a couple of them in a second. But this is a very sci-fi film. This is very different for Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time. A lot of the time, he just played, obviously Predator's slightly sci-fi, but he played majority like as a policeman or as the Terminator, obviously major sci-fi, but he hadn't really sort of played, such a well-rounded role as this, I think, as Douglas Quaid. Essentially, the plot of the film, for people who haven't seen it, is he essentially is. He goes to like a virtual reality place, and he sort of put you on holiday in your brain, and you can have like this fantasy life. And it seems to go wrong for him, and he seems to remember what happened on Mars because it's obviously in the future. And obviously, he's a freedom fighter who's trying to, who used to be a spy working on Mars, who's trying to help the people of Mars be free. And obviously, it's a very Arnold Schwarzenegger film, but a tiny bit more sophisticated. And obviously, there's some great one-liners. Obviously, when he's in the chair asking what his perfect woman is. I always laugh the way he says sleazy, demure. It's just like ridiculous. And obviously, people always remember as well, Cohagen, give these people some air. It's like they're the main. Like it's just a very quotable film. And again, this is a film that I grew up on when I was young. Again, my dad never stopped me watching 18s for a reason. So I just love this film. And obviously, I've got a fever kid, I've got 5 kids to feed, man. There's just so many quotable lines. So I mean, I think it is one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best films.
Yeah, I mean, I said to you off camera before, I haven't seen this film for a while, but I do remember quite a lot about it. I mean, it's a fun space adventure movie, isn't it? And like you said, Arnie, it is a little bit of a different role for him because without trying to spoil anything, I'm trying to sort of see a different side to his character halfway through, if I remember rightly. But like you said, loads of nice quotes with that guy walks up to him with the weird face. I think he's got like 3 eyeballs or something. Yeah. Or 1 eyeball. Just says, you got some nerve showing your face around there. And he goes, look who's talking.
It's silly at the same time, but like really serious. Like I remember watching as a kid, and the special effects look terrible now. Don't be wrong, but where they go, obviously you can't breathe Mars there. So when people float the window into Mars outside, like the the mall or whatever they were in. You know, they'd be like, "Ugh," you know, it'd be horrible to watch as a kid. It was really, like, really memorable. But yeah, it's just a very Arnold Schwarzenegger film. There's lots of action, lots of one-liners. You know, there's the bit where he's dressed as a woman. He's not dressed as a woman. It's a woman, and if it turns out to be, and he takes the head off, and 2 weeks. You have to see. It's quite silly, but it's also great. Obviously, Paul Verhoeven, you know, good director. I think it's just a quintessential Arnie film, and I'm going to be honest, I can't really go, you know, any film conversation without mentioning Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's just impossible for me.
You know, like, it's a match made in heaven for me. I'm surprised I haven't seen it more often, because you mentioned Verhoeven there. Him was one of my favourite directors. He still is. But Arnie was my hero growing up, and them two together, it's a bit of a match made in heaven for me. So I'm surprised. I've only seen this a couple of times, but I do remember loving it each time. Really. So when you mentioned the effects there, they are quite terrible. Like, with the eyeballs are coming out and stuff.
Yeah.
I actually like, you know, with the way the creatures look in this, because if that was made now, just be CGI everywhere.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
I'm more on about, you know, like, the faces of the creatures
Quarto and stuff like that. Yeah. The baby in the stomach and stuff like that.
yeah. But Ronnie Cox is in this as well, isn't he? He's a bit of a jerk, everything he's in.
It's just like, you know, Michael Ironside's in it as well, obviously. Sharon Stone, who at the peak, a wink at you, the peak of her powers, you know, at the time. And, you know, it's just a different sort of film. You know, it's not like a film that they'd make now. They don't make films like this. They made a terrible remake with Colin Farrell. Yeah, I wouldn't give it the time of day. Watch the original, people, if you get a chance to.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to rewatch that, because talking about it now is just making me want to watch it again. But that is Total Recall. Anything else to say on that one, Andy?
No, again, it was just a big box office hit at its time, and I think it was a good. You know, obviously we'll get on to another Arnie film soon, but I think it was like a big start. Was big 90s.
Yeah, well, I think for my one next, I might just talk about that Arnie film while we're here. Right, obviously, if you haven't guessed it already, everyone, it is one of the best sequels of all time, Terminator 2. And you know what, I'm just going to admit this now, I struggle every time I mention Terminator 2, because I don't know where to start. It's a bit like RoboCop, where it's just so many things that you can talk about. You know, I think James Cameron took what he done with it. I know he didn't direct Aliens, but he took Alien and turned it on its head a little bit. And I feel like that's what he done here with the Terminator. Terminator's more of a, you know, very, very dark film. Some might argue it's a horror slasher. This one is definitely more action and orientated, and it's more, you know, he obviously switched Arnie around from being the villain to the hero here, which was a brilliant move. And, you know, he didn't go for the bigger Terminator for the villain. He actually went the opposite with the more slim cat eyes looking around, you know, with Robert Patrick, who's just one of the best villains ever, as the T-1000, isn't he? But it's just unbelievable sequel. It really is. It's one of the best films of all time, definitely in my top 5. And there's so much. I've got other things to say about it, but I'll just let you go, Andy. What do you think about Terminator 2?
Oh, I love Terminator. I love Terminator 2. I hopefully don't step on too many of the things you got, but I love Terminator 2. The only reason I sort of didn't choose this is I'm really staunch on Terminator 1 being better. So I you know, to back myself, I have to always pick Terminator 1. But Terminator 2 is like another film that I grew up watching. I must have watched like 150, 200 times as a kid. Again, you know, from the opening moments where Arnie and Robert Patrick come into the scene, and they go and visit the house, and I just always remember where obviously the mall scene, obviously where he beats Arnie up, and you think, whoa, there's a more powerful Terminator. But it's just where John Connor gets on the bike and is revving away, and he starts that run, and Robert Patrick's got this really like creepy run, and I always remember as a kid that run. You think, oh god, he's so fast, and obviously the unbelievable action scene in like the subways there. It's just a great film, really. It's got, as you say, it's got all different things. One of my favourite scenes, obviously, is where Sarah Connor, who's obviously now locked up now, sees Arnold Schwarzenegger when he comes out the lift, and she backs off and she's crawling the slow-mo. I just think that's a really great, because I watched the new Terminator film, Dark Fate, recently, because it's more of a direct sequel than any of the others to this one, and I think it's actually quite underrated for me, Dark Fate. I actually really enjoyed it, and the way the Sarah Connor and Arnie relationship, I'm not going to spoil too much, continues in that film is fantastic. But no, I'll let you say more. I'll probably have more to say after that.
Yeah, just quickly, I will say, like, I enjoyed Dark Fate as well. It gets a lot of hate, I think. for a certain moment that happens at the start, but I won't say nothing. But yeah. I think it's a good film. But I just want, like, what I liked about this, what Cameron done, he made it a big action film and stuff, but there's still that sci-fi element there, because what I like about it, John Connor's teaching Arnold all the way through how to be more human and stuff. And, you know, he's teaching him all these little quotes and stuff. And when he puts that bullet into the T-1000 and just says, "Hasta la vista, baby," that is one of the coolest moments ever in cinema history for me, that because John taught him that. And, you know, at the end as well, it comes into it where he says, you know, "I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do." And it just got that emotional sci-fi feeling towards the end. And when you mentioned the shopping mall as well, can you imagine in 1992, you're just thinking, what's going on here? You know, why is Arnold shooting it, protecting John? You'd be like, whoa, what's going on? If you didn't know about the, you know, the spoilers, obviously. But another thing I love about this film, you mentioned the bike chase, but it's the, you know, the helicopter chase after
yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, like, Cameron had to get a stunt guy to go through that tunnel twice in a helicopter because he needed both angles. And whoever done that helicopter, I forgot his name. I did look it up a while ago, but what a guy. You know, you've got to have balls of steel to do that, haven't you? But
yeah, true.
You just go on about this film forever, mate. I mean, you got the... Go on, sorry, Andy.
I was just going to say, I love that scene where it's in, obviously, Cyberdyne Systems, isn't it, where they go in and Arnold just gets the big Gatling gun out and just spraying it. Doesn't kill anyone because John asked him not to. I just love that. But that scene, as a kid, I just remember, like, the Gatling gun all over the place. And it's just a really good, it's like, it touches everything, as you're saying. It's like, it's got the heart as well. Like, I love the bit at the end where the T-1000 sort of getting the upper hand against Sarah Connor and John, and he just comes up on the cog with the rocket, the rocket launch, whatever it is, and shoots him. It's just so fantastic. Like, he you know, I like him best as the bad Terminator, but he's so good because he adds that little bit of heart as the good Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, when you mentioned that Gatling gun scene as well, the helicopter just gets off, doesn't it, and goes, "He's got a damn minigun."
The only thing bad about the film is that Edward Furlong didn't have a great life after, you know, but he's just so annoying as John Connor. But I suppose it's what kids of the 90s were like, and obviously great soundtrack, Guns N' Roses, great song, you know, that really makes the film, I think. But yeah, it's like one big action scene after another, but filled with like little bits of heart, like Sarah Connor going meeting her friends to get the guns and stuff like that. It's just from pillar to post, a great film.
And just last thing I'll say, when you're mentioning Sarah Connor, like, she's my favourite heroine of all time in a movie, you know, because of it. I mean, you got Arnold, you got the T-1000, but she's a big character in this film as well. She's just as badass. Well, maybe not as badass as Arnie, but she is a badass in this, isn't she? She's just a great character in this film, and she's gone from, like, we seen it toward the end of the first one, didn't we? Just get that bit of strength about her, and this one she's just full blown, you know, what she was intended to do. So. Exactly. That is Terminator 2. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that one. But do you want to move on to the next one, Andy? Next movie yours?
I'm going to talk about another one where a baddie's a sort of central role in this film. It's the 1991 film Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme. Obviously most famous is Hannibal Lecter's second appearance in film after Manhunter, which obviously is not along the same sort of what we call the same world as these films, because that was obviously Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter. But it's obviously famous for, you know, Anthony Hopkins' unbelievable turn as you know, Hannibal the Cannibal. You know, he's only in the film for 16 minutes, but it's such a memorable performance. I think this is the last Oscar, the last film to win all 4 major Oscars. So that's Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Actress as well. I think that was 1991. This is the last one. I think before that was I think Chinatown in 1974. But it's just a superb film, and you know, Jodie Foster, obviously we talked about Taxi Driver the other week. She's now older. She plays Khalees Starling, and it's just the whole film really is. Don't be wrong. There's a really scary serial killer called Buffalo Bill, but the actual real film is the interplay between Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Obviously, the famous line, you know, "Eat his liver with us, some fava beans and a nice Chianti, makes the noise, don't do it on here, don't want to scare the kids." But it's just the way he speaks and the way their interactions that really make the film. And I think even though he's only in the film the 16 minutes, I think he's one of the most famous characters in film history, and it's just such a great film as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention, how long he's in the film for, but he still, you know, is amazing in it and just so iconic. And but I think it's so atmospheric, this film. I mean, you always know there's a killer on the loose, and everyone's a little bit on edge, aren't they? And it's I, I watched clips of it the other day just to refresh my memory, and there's a great score every time Jodie Foster's on screen. Like it's like her score when she's jogging in the park and stuff like that, or through the woods and stuff. It's a fantastic score. It's very very memorable. But like you said, it's just the way it won all them Oscars as well. It sort of gets writ off now as a thriller, but I think, in my opinion, this is definitely a horror film for me.
Buffalo Bill is a scary, one of the most memorable scenes. And I was young when I watched this film again, but he's obviously wants to be, he's obviously a transsexual, and he goes in front of the mirror with the Q Lazarus song "Good by Horses," and it's a very, very memorable scene, and he's obviously put the lotion on the basket. He's Ted Levine's got a great voice, and I think he plays Buffalo Bill really well. And I think it is scary because I remember being scared as a child. Obviously the scene where it's I think it's in a library or something in Memphis where Hannibal Lecter escapes. He's so frightening where he gets the handcuffs on the cop, and obviously the screams. I can still remember them now. But yeah, it is a horror film for me. I think don't be wrong, it is, it's classed as a thriller, but you're right. It has got large elements of horror as well.
It's an interesting aspect as well, because she's going to talk to this cannibal to catch another killer, and it's like she needs his help.
It's based off the real life story. I think his name was Robert Ressler, who's an FBI profile, went to speak to Ted Bundy in regards to the Green River killings in America, and not that they got anything off Bundy because he'd like to talk about himself too much, but it's based off that. And I think Thomas Harris, who's, by the way, I've read his books. I don't think they're as good. This film really, really does justice to his book, like more than does justice to it. But yeah, it's all about Hopkins and Foster for me. I think they were just brilliant and fully. He probably should have got best supporting actor, let's be honest, for 16 minutes, but fully deserve another Oscars for the films.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that, to be honest. Thanks to that fact, but. Just before we go off to another film, I just need to say, like, that mask is so iconic, isn't it? Where he's strapped up, like, that is iconic movie history being made right there, isn't it?
There's so many lines. There's the awful bit where she's walking past the cell, and unfortunately multiple niggas flick something at her, and he asks her what it is, and he talks the fella to his death the next night. There's the way they make Hannibal, who's just behind the screen and not really threatening when you see him, because he's at the back of the room and the light comes and he goes, "Thank you, bye." He's just it's the atmosphere. It's quite Hitchcockian, really, in the way it builds tension. I think it's an excellent film, really. Yeah.
I always love that scene where she's walking towards him through the high security cells. It's weird.
It's creepy, yeah.
First time you see it, like, who is she going to see? Yeah, but one moment that always scared me on that a little bit. I was a bit shocked where Buffalo Bill's asking that woman to help him into the van, and he's just lifting the couch.
Ted Bundy, yeah, that's exactly what Ted Bundy was up to. Yeah, cast on his arm and he just whacks it. I like, obviously Lecter moves away from Lecter towards the end. I like when Foster goes to the house and she's, was she a great big fair person? He's really, really scary, and so you shift one scary person away to another scary person with all the moths and the butterflies or whatever they are. Yeah, it's just a scary film. And I think they don't make films like that anymore. It's, obviously a lot of things are blockbusters or they're Oscar films. This is an in-between, which can be an Oscar film, but it also was obviously a very popular film at the time as well.
Yeah, and that was a good idea. I thought at the end to put them night vision goggles on, to be honest. All right, should we move on? That is The Silence of the Lambs, one of the greatest horror movies ever made, in my opinion. But what shall I go with next? I'll go with this film. It's in a similar vein, and that is Seven. David Fincher, absolute masterclass of crime thriller. Just this is how you tell a serial killer story, in my opinion. But what I love about it, like Silence of the Lambs, it's so atmospheric as well. It's always raining, isn't it? It's so dark. Like every scene's just it's pissing down.
It's a horrible film, yeah. It really is gloom, yeah.
But I like Brad Pitt's trying to project himself as this. I want to be this great detective, and Morgan Freeman's like the total opposite end. He's 5 days away from retirement, trying to like just go, oh, whatever, I don't care, but wants to see this little case out, and it's a good little chemistry they've got on screen. I feel it's sometimes opposite ends work better, I think, when they're together. And obviously, I think it's building up tension all the way through the film. You're wondering what's going to happen with this killer. They're going to get him and all that. And for me, like I think this is a thriller myself. It's a little bit different to sound, but the last 20-30 minutes it does go into a horror film for me. I mean, when speak, well, obviously I won't. Well, I will name the actor. The Spacey who comes into it. It just turns. It just changes the film dynamic, doesn't it? But
yeah, listen, as well. I'm spoiling everything here. I don't care. To do the film justice, you have to spoil, because Kevin Spacey and obviously David Fincher heavily pushed for him not to be advertised for this film. Obviously, he's come off the back of an Oscar for Usual Suspects in '94, and it was really smart, because you have no idea who's, obviously if you knew Kevin Spacey was going to be the whole film, you would be waiting for Kevin Spacey to turn up. But because he's not advertised in the role, when he turns up with the blood all over his hands, you're like, oh my God, it's Kevin Spacey, he's the killer. And that from that point on, where he's got the blood on his hands, to the end is just unbelievable filmmaking. It's just so good. The helicopter over the electrical lines, the interplay between the actors, or talking about him trying to finish his 7 sins. I won't spoil the exact ending, but it's just superb. And as you rightly say, Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman together are fantastic. Morgan Freeman basically hates the city that he lives in. And let's be honest here, it's ambiguous. What city is it? Is it Seattle with all the rain, or is it New York? It's like basically everyone in the city is a scumbag, bar the 2 cops and Gwyneth Paltrow, and everyone else is horrible. It's a really atmospheric film, and the scene where they find, he goes to John Doe's apartment and he escapes, and the fight, run around the hotel, which is really, is it a hotel or is it an apartment building? I don't know, but it's really horrible, and it's not a nice place, and it's just a great film. And I think Finch is obviously really good at making films like that. And Zodiac, is another film that he does really well with, building tension and using an atmosphere. But obviously, 70s San Francisco isn't this ambiguous place of horror, that he uses for this film. But no, it's superb. And Morgan Freeman again. And I always say this is Brad Pitt's best role. I think people may say, that some of his newer films were better, but for me, this has always been his best role.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's Aaron Ennis and Fight Club for me. I think he's great in both of them.
Yeah.
Both David Fincher films, by the way. But you just mentioned it as well, that scene where they're in the... Well, it is in an apartment. You feel like the killer in this is always in control, but you realise these two are quite good detectives because they get the upper hand a little bit, and the killer's not expecting it. And I think that's a great scene after the chase through the apartments and stuff. And when you say it is a very tense building film, when you talk about the ending again, when you see that car coming over the hill, it's meant to be delivering, so you're like, what the hell is it? And it seems miles away, doesn't it? And you're just waiting for this car to come up and deliver this package, and you're like, what the hell is in this? But
I think the way they set up the characters is genius. Like, you can see straight away that what's Pitt's the character's name? Somerset is Morgan Freeman's. I can't remember his character's name, but he's really a hothead, isn't he? He's always like, he argues with the reporter on the stairs. Well, we won't spoil who that is, but he's just, he's really hothead, and at the end is basically a culmination of everything. Basically Gwyneth Paltrow not wanting to live in the city at all, wanting to and hating it. His hot-headedness and Morgan Freeman's overall calm, but disdain for his job and the people he has to deal with. It's obviously the end. I won't spoil it too much. It's just one of those perfect ends to a film ever. Some people like happy endings, some people like questions. I prefer questions sometimes.
Same. One more thing I'll say about it. It's like we said, it's a very, very dark film, but that bit in the middle where they're just talking in the apartment, the 3 of them, and Morgan Freeman tells a joke, and they just all burst out laughing. I feel like the film needed that, a
little bit of levity, yeah.
It just breaks up the terrible situation that they're dealing with.
It's a bleak film, it gives you moments of little hope, like, where obviously they find out that he's been taking the books out, so they're going to catch the killer, and the bit where they're going to get, they think they're going to be able to interview him and stuff, and they're preparing, shaving the chest, put the mic on and stuff like that. But it just keeps taking it away, because this place and this period of time, then it's just dark and horrible. It's Fincher's. I think it's Fincher's masterpiece, mate. I know people love Fight Club, but I think this is his masterpiece.
Yeah, it's beautiful darkness, if you like. Well, that is 7. Anything else to say on that, Andy? Or?
No, it's brilliant, mate. No worries.
Brilliant. 2 brilliant detective crime films there that we've just mentioned. But do you want to move on to your next one then, Andy?
Well, the only way to set this up is the greatest heist film of all time. This is 1995. Michael Mann, the greatest LA director ever. He shoots LA so well. Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro finally meeting after nearly 30 years of obviously after Godfather Part 2 where they're both in it. This is the first time they meet on screen, and obviously the famous diner scene, which is I'm going to put you down. It's just a classic. Like, I think this film, the more and more you watch it, the more little nuances and the more things you enjoy of it. Like, Al Pacino is absolutely crazy in this film. Like, he's even said recently that he was playing the characters he was on coke. Let's be honest, there's no scene in here where he takes coke. He's a police officer, but he's absolutely insane in it. Just screaming at people, "Show me what you got!" And all the crazy things he does.
Was he actually on coke?
That's supposedly the character was on coke, but you never know. Now when he says that, you think, oh, actually that makes sense, but you don't really realize it. Basically, the gist of this film is like it's a stylistic thriller about a group of robbers and a group of police officers, mainly centered on obviously the two of the greatest actors of all time. And let's be honest, people go, Pacino won the film and Pacino was great, but Pacino had the part to win the film. Robert De Niro was really understated in this film as Neil McCauley, who was obviously the mastermind of the robbers. And I think Mann's such a great director. This and Collateral are really great films, and for me, I think I could watch this film 100 times over. It's got so many good people, and Jon Voight, Val Kilmer, Hank Azaria makes an appearance in this film. There's a load of Ted Levine's in this film. There's so many, there's so many William Victor's in this film. There's so many good people in this film that it's hard to you forget. And the only downside to this film is the weird Van Zandt's the other one, Wayne Grow serial killer stuff, which makes no sense. But other than that, it is the best heist film ever.
Yeah. You said it then. This is one of them films for me that gets better every time. I've seen it 3 times altogether now. And the first time I watched it, I went, that's a good film now. The second time I was like, right, I understand now why this gets talked about a lot. And the last time I watched it, it just went into my top 10 of all time. I was just like, it's an absolute masterpiece. It is. And just like, obviously, Pacino and De Niro together in that cafe, where he's just going, I won't hesitate, not for a second. And if you finally got them together, and I think they're only in that scene in the whole movie together for that 6 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But such a memorable scene, isn't it? 2 best actors ever, in my opinion. And straight after that, you got the big shootout. What a shootout that is, just after the bank robbery. I mean, it's just absolute brilliant cinema, isn't it? It's just fantastic.
The best thing about that shootout, and I think if anyone's seen Den of Thieves, obviously nowhere near the same level of film, but it is a pretty good heist film. A lot of heist films in town as well. How loud the guns are in Heat is a lot of the later heist films took this. It's very atmospheric. Like when they're on that LA street outside the bank shooting each other, all you can hear is pop, 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 pop. It's the guns. You can barely hear people talking. And apart from Al Pacino's terrible run, it is just a great scene. But no, I can talk about this film all day. The opening robbery is really stylish. I like Neil McCauley and he has the sort of, basically his motto is that you have to be willing to give everything up and just leave at a moment's notice, but he falls in love, and it's ultimately what leads to a lot of problems for him. And obviously Val Kilmer is a gambler with Ashley Judd. She's in the film as well. So many good actors in this film. There's so many little parts in it and little small stories that make the film really great. But no, I think Michael Mann's just such a masterful director when it comes to using the LA landscape. I know obviously Miami Vice, he's famous for doing that in the 80s, and he did the 2006 film, but he really is a master at showing LA off and using its landscape to make it a really great film.
Yeah, you mentioned there the sound and the bank robbery shootout scene. When I bought a 4K telly about a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago, and the first film I put in, like, I didn't watch the whole film, but I just put that scene on because I just wanted to see what it looked like. It just sounded great. It looked great. It was fantastic. But yeah, I don't know about you, but I sort of root for De Niro in this tour. As the movie goes on, you're like, just fuck this Wayne Go character off. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And he just can't help himself, can he?
But I think great films do that way. Even though you know the ending, you've seen it a number of times, you think, please make a different decision. Please make a different decision. And he just doesn't. And Al Pacino is not exactly. He's obviously got the weird Natalie Portman and a mum storyline going on. But Pacino's just mesmeric in this scene. I love the bit where they say they're at this like sort of dock place, and all the police are there, and they're looking around, going, "What are they going to rob around here?" And he goes, "They've made us the Los Angeles Police Department, and he's just like he's on the crane taking shots of them, and he's like, yeah, it's just crazy. It's such a good film. And I think Al Pacino is by this stage, because he's, you know, the understated Michael Corleone acting's gone out the window, and he's full scent of a woman. Al Pacino at this point, isn't he?
He is over the top in it, but like you said, I love him like that, to be honest.
Vincent Hanna, yeah.
Out everywhere. It is a weird little storyline that's going on with his wife, but I think that's a good idea. You could just have him as his wife, but it's good the way he's twisted it a little bit, because every film just does that, don't you? I mean, it's good the way he twisted it a little bit, man. I think that.
Yeah, I like the bit when he walks in, his wif's having an affair. He's like, sit down! And it's just like screaming at the fella. Grabs his telly off him like dead, like petulantly. It's so good, yeah. It's like, yeah. It's just a bit, as I say, now you realise they said the character was on coke. It makes a lot of sense, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Alright, that is Heat. Should we go on to the next one then, Andy? Or?
After you, mate, yeah, go on.
Brilliant film, Heat, brilliant film. Well, I'm going to mention one now, and this isn't for everyone. But this is the... I was telling my mate, actually, I'm going to do in a 90s decade with Andy. That's my next video. And he went, you better not mention this film, because it's not for everyone. That is Fargo. Now, a brilliant film by the Coen brothers, in my opinion. I've actually got quite a bit of nostalgia for this, but I'll tell you why in a minute. But it's very, very hard to explain what the Coen brothers captured here with this film, because it's a black comedy. And there's so many, like, funny moments, but it's brutal as well at times, and they just captured this thing, and I don't know what the best way to explain it, but you have to see the film to understand what I'm saying, basically, because it's just, there's so many depressing moments in this film of fun, lovable characters, if you get me, like Jerry Lundegaard. You got obviously Frances McDormand, who won the Oscar as the pregnant cop in this, and it's just, I just think it's a brilliant little story. Like, he's got a plan with these two characters to kidnap his wife, and he'll give them back half the money that his wealthy dad's gonna pay. But really, he's sort of screwing them over, because he's asking for a lot more money. He's asking for $1 million. He's gonna give them 40,000 or something. But he's told them a different story, that it's gonna be 80,000 what he's asking for. Stuff like that, and everything just goes wrong. But I just love this film. I've watched it so many times. One of my favourite films ever. And the reason I've got a lot of nostalgia for it, me and my uncle and his mate just watched it once. I was about 12 at the time, I think, but we just laughed so much at some of the moments in it. But like I said, it is depressing as well at the same time, some of the shit that happens. But have you seen Fargo, Andy?
Yeah, I think it is a superb film. I think William H. Macy's an absolute fantastic little weasel in it, and I think what the Coen brothers really capture well is small townness. You know, I know Minnesota's a big city, but Minnesota people are quite small, quite a small town. You obviously live in a very cold part of America, and I think he captures it really well, especially with Frances McDormand's character, who is really quite smart, but she plays it quite wide-eyed as well. You know, she's a really happy-go-lucky person. She obviously is heavily pregnant. I think William H. Macy, though, just cracks me up, because he's so, like, Minnesota? You know, he's just so, like, really, like, wide-eyed, and everything he does just keeps failing. And when he's trying to explain things, he's stumbling over his words. The explanations mean absolutely nothing. And I think the Coen brothers used the sort of same themes as well when they did the later films. Obviously, not the really good, that's a different film. No Country for Old Men, the same level of sort of small townness, and the way they build the characters of little nuances. And obviously, Antoine Chigurh has a much different characters in this film, but Peter Stormare is quite scary in this film. Obviously went on to do Armageddon a couple of years later, but yeah, I really do enjoy this film. I think it is a quintessential Coen brothers film.
Yeah, I just want to mention as well, like, William H. Macy's great in it. Peter Stormare, is it?
Stormare, yeah.
Yeah. But Steve Buscemi in this film's got a mad little character arc, because he's just like a little, he's just nothing really, and he's got this psycho next to him, Peter Stormare, and he's like, I'll take care of this when the cop pulls them over, and Peter Stormare has to shoot the cop in the head, basically. But by the end of the film, Steve Buscemi is this character who's just lost the plot, and he's just killing everyone. He kills the parking lot attendant, he kills William H. Macy's dad. But at the start, he wouldn't have been able to do that. But by the end of the film, he's just had enough, hasn't he? And it's a great arc, I feel. He's brilliant in this, Steve Buscemi.
He's just a great actor, Look, forget he was in Armageddon as well. I only watched Armageddon last night, funny enough. But no, you know, Steve Buscemi, he's an actor who was in the 90s, especially. Obviously now people know much more of a Boardwalk Empire, and obviously he's more of a star now. But back then he was very much, this is an indie film. In the 90s very much was the indie film. There's a book by Peter Biskind about the indie films of the early 90s about Miramax and Quentin Tarantino and these. It's really interesting to read. But he is very much an indie actor. He was in a lot of Adam Sandler films as well. He made really weird appearances, and but this was like a real big performance for him. And I think again, yeah, you're right. Steve Buscemi's just a fantastic actor, really, as well.
Yeah, and like you said, when he captured the little town feeling of it, my mate didn't like this film because of the amount of times they say "yeah," but I think you've just got to sort of get on board with that if you like to get on. But
it's near the Canadian border, isn't it, Minnesota? They have a very particular dialect. I think the way William H. Macy does it's just because he does come across as a conniving weasel, but again simple at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but they brought a brilliant TV series out of this.
I haven't watched it yet, unfortunately.
To me, the most underrated TV series ever. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. But he sort of done that as well with the guy off Lord of the Rings, Martin Freeman.
Oh yeah.
He sort of plays like the same type of character as William H. Macy, and it's like a little weasel or whatever. But that is the movie Fargo, and if you haven't seen it, I can't say I would recommend it because you might hate it and you might hate me for recommending it, but I think it's brilliant. That is Fargo. Andy, do you want to move on to the next one?
Well, this is my last film, and this is one of my favourite films ever. This is, I think one of the opening lines in the film is "I always wanted to be a gangster." It's Goodfellas, 1990 Martin Scorsese film, and again, this is a film I've watched hundreds of times. Just a film I enjoyed. Obviously, Ray Liotta, great as Henry Hill. Never really reached the same heights after this film, but he's perfect for the role. And Joe Pesci as Tommy DeVito is one of the scariest film characters ever. Just a maniac of the highest order who just will shoot anyone for any slip of the tongue. Obviously, poor Spider gets shot because he tells him to go F himself at one point. So the difference between this and The Godfather, I think even mafia people said this is like the heart of the mafia. It's like they go around the houses for cook-offs and stuff like that. Whereas the Godfather films, this very opulent, the Godfather, the family. This is like a smaller, like more localized mafia. Obviously, Jimmy Conway played by Robert De Niro as well, and it's just so many great performances in the film. And I think this, for me, and maybe controversial to some, this is Martin Scorsese's greatest film.
Oh, I agree. I think when people were watching this, they were probably going, "He's best mentioned Goodfellas," because a lot of people think it's the greatest gangster movie of all time, and that's a good point, But I went to see this at the cinema last year, and it was amazing. Like I knew it was amazing, but when I watched it at the cinema, I was like, "Oh my god, this is like I'd never seen it before." And there's so many good characters in this movie. That's what makes it for me. And there's even like you mentioned, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, what's the other guy, Henry Hill.
Yep. Ray Liotta.
They're all great in this, all three of them. And they work so well on screen together. But there's little characters in this, like Jimmy Two Times, who's in it for like 2 seconds.
Get the papers, yeah.
It's a memorable scene, isn't it? And you've got like the guy who's in the freezer who comes in with
Frankie Mumbles.
Yeah, he just says, "Don't buy anything," and he walks in with this big mink coat, and it's just a great moment, isn't it? But so many great characters there is, and what I love about this film, one of my favourite moments, is the shine box scene. I mean, as bad as Joe Pesci, as a horrible person he is in this, you stick up for him here, don't you? Because that Billy Batts is just an asshole.
That whole scene from where obviously they have the argument, obviously to him a little bit of damage, and then the scene where they drive to Joe Pesci's mum and she gets the painting out and he goes, "Who does he look like?" Ha ha ha! They just laugh. The fella's like dead in the boot of the car, like stabbed to death, horribly injured, and they're all laughing. And Henry can't even eat his pasta because he's so like disgusted by it. And it's just such a good, that's such a great scene. Like, there's so many great one-liners. I love the bit where the restaurant owner's like, because Tommy's been like whacked him or whatever, like battered to beat him up, and he's like, "Well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to shoot him?" "You could." And he's like that. It's like, I was joking. Because Paul Sorvino's really, really good in this film as Paulie as well. Like really understated, like role as like the mafia boss. It's just is the mafia film. I think I've seen this before. I've seen The Godfather originally. obviously everyone knows the famous scene is it, my clown, do I amuse you? That scene where he's winding Henry up, but it's also a great soundtrack as well. Good use of Harry Nilsson as well. That's a great song towards the end with the helicopters going over. And it turns from a really like mafia film, very similar to The Godfather, into it really went one of like sleazy drugs and what really changed in the mafia in the 80s. And I think Martin Scorsese does an unbelievable job of of portraying the characters really in the setting.
Yeah, I love the way like he puts loads of different types of filmmaking in this as well. Like the postman, he goes into the fucking oven. You'll go if any letters come home, but it just stops as his head's going through the window or whatever it is to throw it through it.
Do you like The Sopranos?
I can't say, Andy. I've never seen it.
Right, okay. Well, for people who've seen The Sopranos, Paulie, one of the main characters in Sopranos, he's the one who puts the postman's head in the oven.
Oh, is
So
he,
it's a little bit of a tie-in there. Yes, there's a couple of people who were in the film, but no, obviously there's heists in it. You don't actually see the heists, of course, but it's just a superb film, and I think they've never really made mafia films since. I think obviously the last good one probably was what's the film with Johnny Depp in? Joker Stone. No. What's it called? Donnie Brasco.
Which one, sorry? Donnie Brasco,
yeah. That's probably the last great one. Al Pacino is in that one. That's probably the last, and they haven't really made them since, probably because you can't touch them because this and the Godfather's so good. But no, this for me is one of my favourite films ever. And I only watched it the other week, and I was just riveted watching it. It's just such a good film. I love the scene in prison where they're making the tea, and basically because they're so the mafia, they can pay the way, and they basically got their own private wing in the prison. He's like, they're making the tea. He's like, don't put too much onions in the sauce. How many onions did you put in? It was two whole onions. It's just like great little interplay, and it's a superb film, and obviously. Joe Pesci won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for playing Tommy DeVito, but Ray Liotta and Robert De Niro were excellent in the film as well.
I mean, you're talking of the scenes there. I mean, nearly every one of them is just brilliant, isn't it? Nearly every scene in it. Even just little things, like I touched on Jimmy 2 times, just little touches. But there's that one where Maury keeps asking him he keeps asking, he wants his money off Maury for the advertisement. And the advertisement is Maury's wigs never come off, and De Niro grabs him and the wig comes off.
He's Ray Liotta just stood there
laughing, isn't he?
but no, go on.
Go on. You know,
I've lost my train of thought. You go.
I was going to say as well, it's got one of the coolest movie scenes ever in this. I think De Niro makes smoking look cool here. If you wanted to advertise smoking, get him to do it, because it's just where he's thinking about killing Maury and the music comes on and he's just having a ciggy staring at him and then sort of does a little laugh to himself and just like, whoa, that is amazing.
I love the bit where this is cool as well, where Henry Hill takes what is to become his wife out, and they go to the Copacabana club and they go through the back entrance and you see them all like traveling through and basically get a table right at the front as well. That is what you'd assume the mafia is like. You do get further in life because of these people. I think I also love the start where young Henry's selling cigarettes and he goes, it's okay. He said, no, it's not okay. He tries to bribe the police officer. I always remember the bit where he comes out of the court and Robert De Niro is like, you learn 2 great lessons today: never rat on your friends, and and take a pinch well, or whatever he says. But I always remember, it's just great. The whole film's fantastic.
That scene what you're talking about with the walk through, that's me mate Mark's favourite movie scene ever. But yeah, like he said, it's like, I mean, if we wanted it, we just took it. That's what he says, doesn't he? But anyway, that is Goodfellas. I mean, fantastic, brilliant movie. So, should we just move on to my last one, Andy? That is pretty certain this is the same director as The Shawshank Redemption.
It is.
Unbelievable to me, Frank Darabont. It's The Green Mile. What a film. This is just perfect. 10 out of 10. And like, there's about 15 films in this world I'd give a 10 to, and this is one of them to me. I just think it's absolutely amazing. It's a 3-hour epic, but you're never bored at any moment in this film. It's just so what? It just never feels like 3 hours to me. It just feels like it's flew over because you were enjoying the movie that much. And it all takes place in sort of this, just not all of it, but 90% this secluded little prison. And it's got so many great characters in and around this little prison. It tells a great story. I just loved the whole film. And Tom Hanks again, another brilliant performance. One of his brilliant performances from the 90s. But you got that you know, it's an emotional film, isn't it? It's so sad, but tells a great story, I feel.
Yeah, it's Michael Clark Duncan's just perfect as John Coffey, like the drink only not spelled the same, of course. That there's so many. Again, it's a really heartwarming film, but again, it's quite it's quite brutal. Obviously, Wild Bill is Sam Rockwell. Obviously, he's become a really good actor in his own right now. Is a disgusting character, and obviously, I don't want to spoil it too much. But no, I think Frank Darabont's a fantastic actor. Does anyone do prison films as well? Probably not. It just from Mouse. There's little light moments like Mouseville, but Percy's also just absolutely awful person as well. Little Percy Wetmore.
Yeah.
It's just there's loads of good actors in this. James Cromwell, who's obviously people know from Babe, I think, and other films. He's in a David Morse, who's obviously he's in The Negotiator and other films as well. There's all sorts of good. Barry Pepper, he's and obviously Jeffrey Damon, who's also in a lot of Frank Darabont films. I just love this film. I think it's another heartwarming 90s film, but I think Frank Darabont's an excellent director. Obviously, he did the Walking Dead TV series. I love The Mist. I don't know if you're a big fan of that or not. The horror film with Thomas Jane, and that's a really good film. And I think the combination of Darabont prison film with Tom Hanks is just perfect, really. And yeah, you can't get many better films. I remember I watched this when I was in America on holiday when it was like 12 or 13. It's just superb.
Yeah, it is. And I love, like, when you say it's heartwarming and stuff, the characters in this prison, they've done bad things, but you feel so sorry for them when they go to the chair, don't you? You just, like, but Delacroix, is it? And the other guy, you just feel so bad for them. It's like, they've probably done terrible things, but that's the good thing about this film. It builds character in all of the characters. Every prison guard's got a story, they all just intertwine really well together. And like you said, Percy is just the worst character in the world, isn't he?
Exactly, yeah. I love old Paul as well. When he takes the older woman to meet the mouse. I just love that scene. I think it's really touching. Obviously, he's playing with a mouse that's like nearly 100 years old. It's an incredible film, and basically, that's pulling punches here. John Coffey is Jesus, essentially, isn't he? He's there to sort of purify the world of all issues, but unfortunately, it's just too much for him to bear. And I think it's a great allegory in that sense that basically we ruin Jesus, and that even Paul Edgecombe, Tom Hanks's character says, basically, I'm killing a gift from God, doesn't he? It's so another film that makes me cry as well. It's just like where he's in the chair and even Barry Pepper has to be told to turn around because he's crying his eyes out. It's just a superb film, really.
I've got goosebumps just thinking about it though, when he shakes his hand.
And then there's also the horrible scene where Percy doesn't wet the sponge on Edward, and it's just like, he's like getting bit, like electrical bit. It's just, again, it's just so many moments, where and the way they shot Michael Clark Duncan's really well, because obviously he's a big fella, don't be wrong, but he's not 8 foot, is he? But they did the old, wrestling Andre the Giant trick where he basically filmed him like down and upwards, so he always looked miles bigger than everyone else. And I think, it's just such a superb film.
Yeah, it's like, he's been made to be this terrible person because he's been wrongly convicted, but he's just like you said, he's a gift from God. He's like the nicest guy ever, isn't he?
He is, yeah, he's so simple. Similar to Forrest Gump in that sense. He's just a simple, nice man. Wrong place, wrong time. And, that scene where it shows Tom Hanks's character what happened to the little girls and Wild Bill, who's a disgrace, saying that Wild Bill is awful, but that scene where he's got the mud pie in his mouth and he spits it all over David Moore, I just can't stop laughing because he's just like, he's looking at him and he's going, poof, right in his face. It's just so brilliant.
It's an horrible thing to do, but as a viewer, I think it's funny.
It's just genius. He's going right in his face. Genius, yeah. It's a great film, and yeah, again, this is a great film, but you could probably mention one of the 25, 30 films, as we said before, from the 90s.
Like, well, I think we'll be ended on The Green Mile. I think that's all of them. But like you said, there's so many. So, I'm sorry if we didn't mention your favourite film here or anything, but maybe we'll do a part 2 if people want that, or if you want to do it, whatever. But
if the voting public wants it, you have to give the people what they want, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I could have named another 20 films there, easy. It's like
Vengeance. I watched that the other night. That's such a great film. There's so many good 90s action films as well.
Yeah, Speed. What
exactly,
a film. Yeah. But I hope you enjoyed it anyway, Andy. I mean,
no, always do, mate.
Yeah, thanks so much.
No worries, mate. Yeah, do it again soon.
Yeah. If there's anything you just want me and Andy to talk about, if you want to call again, just write it in the comments below. I'll reply to every single one of you, I promise. But I hope you all enjoyed this 90s decade debate, if you like. And I really enjoyed it, Andy. Thanks so much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it, mate.
That's it. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for watching. If you want to subscribe, it's up to yourself. If you want to comment, like I said, I'll reply to you all. Take it all easy, guys. See you later, Andy. You want to give everyone a wave? See you all later, guys.
Ta-ra.
Take it all easy, and I'll see you all next video.